Welcome to your in-depth astrology overview and zodiac forecast for August 2024. I'm going to share with you shortly the event chart right at the start of the month, which is going to provide some crucial information of what we're going to discover as we come into August. Some of it is spellbindingly positive, but there are some gotchas too. Of course, it's a moving feast. We're then going to have the lunations. We're going to have planetary angles creating energies and also planets moving ingresses. And I'll go through this with you, but please stay with me. I will then share each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please feel welcome to share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, your interactions and views are truly appreciated as always. I've shared recently that about 50% of people who regularly enjoy my videos are not subscribers. If that's you, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. Now, I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, why not check out my testimonials below? I don't edit these. As they come in, I share as is, word for word. You can discover how other people have experienced working one-to-one with me. Please see the link below. If you'd like to become a patron, patrons get extra information uploaded, and you can become one from $3 a month. Thank you so much if you are a patron. Also, if you would like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, I provide the overarching astrology for each day, which helps us to see the big picture, but also you can enjoy your zodiac sign. Please see the link below for more. And if you'd like to take advantage of my very special annual offer, people have been asking me when I'm going to launch this. So if you order your year 2025 forecast now, I'll provide the rest of this year free. But also my special package, you'll get 30% off and your life roadmap report. That is essentially a blueprint of the experiences you will have encountered in your life so far, but how you can work with these more effectively future forwards. Please see the link below for more. But if you know your natal tropical astrology, why not check out my Draconic package? This will give you Syrian insights in a very different way, much more in terms of your soul or karmic journey. Again, you can get the rest of this year free if you order your 2025 forecast as well as your Draconic character analysis. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. It's always important for us to look at the position of the luminaries, the sun and the moon. The sun is at home in the sign of Leo, where it brings radiance, warmth, reassurance, playfulness even. We also have the moon in the quick-witted sign of Gemini. And the moon position is, to be honest, not its strongest, because the sign of Gemini, of course, is very much to do with air and communications, not so much to do with feeling. But we do have Mars and Jupiter in the sign of Gemini as we start this month, and they're both going to be hugely influential throughout August. So what's the catch? Well, it's the fact that the moon is in a square with Neptune. Neptune's the planet of dreams, it's the planet of imagination, but also it can be to do with unreality. It's on the 29th degree in the sign of Pisces, which it rules. Neptune goes through a 160-year cycle. And next year it's going to move into Aries briefly before returning into the sign of Aries to start that cycle all over in 2026. So it's really asking us, particularly in its retrograde, to think very carefully, along with Saturn, about our psychological approach, how we feel about the parts of ourselves, the shadow side, the more psychological and emotional dimension, because we live in an age which is very much dominated by fact, but also those perceptions are so key, but they could be warped somewhat, distorted by the square to the moon. Because the moon's in the part of our situation to do with quick, everyday communication, whether it's text messages or emails or consuming information online. That's done in a very fast way. We don't often have a great deal of time because in some ways we're assailed by a barrage of different informations and influences. And what Neptune's saying is that when it comes to our home, family and emotional situations, we could have some confusion this month, not just because Mercury goes into its retrograde on the 5th and starts the month in its pre-retrograde shadow, but because of the role of Neptune. So Neptune is going to be a critically important player because it's so close to the first house cusp of the overall zodiac. Now, we do have the Sun in an amazing link with the North Node, or the point of destiny, which is almost like a collective pull. If you think back to the middle of July 2023, when the North Node inversed back into the sign of Aries for the first time in 18.6 years, that was a push to be much more in touch with our sense of identity. If you remember, as last month came to a close, so Chiron, the wounded healer, also in Aries, went into a retrograde. So we're really being asked to take identity seriously. Now, in a really positive way, Mars, the planet which is very much to do with Aries and identity, the first house, the ascendant, is in a sensational link with the Sun right at the start of this month, a sextile. Because the Sun rules the second decan of Aries and Mars rules the third decan of Leo, and also the Sun is exalted or rises in Aries, there is a mutual receptivity in that particular influence. But of course the Sun in the sign of Leo is very much about radiance, confidence, self-belief, and Mars in Gemini is about having confidence about our ideas. So what's not to like? Well, it is because the position of the Moon in Gemini is not supporting us in quite the way it could. Now we also have the position of Jupiter in Gemini is challenged by Saturn in Pisces. So the Pisces energy at the start of this month is quite conflicting to the quick moving energies of Gemini, which is very, very much about feeling very active, enthusiastic, interacting with people in an upbeat and bubbly way. All the great things, the upside of the sign of Gemini. We just need to be mindful that how we communicate needs to include the more psychological dimension. So in other words, say how we feel, but be clear about it, but also understand the information we're receiving may not necessarily be clear. Also, Mercury, the planet of communication, which rules the Sun in Gemini, is domiciled in its other home sign of Virgo right at the start of this month, but is now in its pre-retrograde shadow and in a quincunx with Pluto. Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is very much about the big picture. It's how we're all connected. It's about our future plans. Can be to do with huge changes and transformations for society. So as much as Mercury can ask us to dig down into the details and be very precise and careful about what we're saying, I think that Pluto and Mercury are not well aligned. So we could encounter people with a particular message that they want to share in this post-truth era that we live in, which is much less in terms of politics about facts and much more about winning hearts and minds. And of course there's the other part of society which is very much taken up with the scientific part of life, and that's where sometimes astrology takes a hit. So as we come into this month, there is the potential, particularly with the Sun angling to Jupiter in a quite sensational way from the 3rd to the 11th within 3 degrees and exact on the 9th, and threaded through the glorious Leo new moon of the 4th. And also there's a great link between Venus and Chiron. Venus, like the Sun in Leo, Chiron in the sign of Aries too. There is the potential for some healing through good communication, through being very positive, through feeling that we can overcome challenges, because Jupiter essentially, in terms of its link to that new moon, which is around about 2.5 degrees, it's very close. This is a very constructive new moon. The sign of Leo can be about expressing our talent, flair, artistry, warmth, affection, can be about romance, play, children, their pursuits if you've got them, but also about showcasing what makes us really feel that we're expressing ourselves. But crucially, it can be about meeting up, mingling, having a good social time too. So lots of good stuff there, but with that square between Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn, after all, is no, and Jupiter is go. And also we've got Neptune, which is very opaque in the square with the moon. The chances are that we could encounter someone who's rather gossipy, a bit malicious, not necessarily got our best interests at heart, could be hale and hearty, Jupiter, and very passionate, Mars, but actually behind that, it's important that we really understand people's agendas, because those agendas won't necessarily be particularly pure. Which brings us to the 5th, which is a big day, because as much as we have the energy from the new moon cascading over the following month in a very resonant way, we do have on the 5th Venus move into the sign of Virgo, joining up with Mercury, and in fact they do come into an exact conjunction on the 8th, but Mercury also goes formally into its retrograde on the 5th. Venus is in its full in the sign of Virgo. If we think Venus can, through its rulership of Taurus, be very sensuous, very much to do with money, self-worth, our appreciation of the good things in life, bit of luxury, good food, can be to do with agriculture too, as can, to be fair, the sign of Virgo. But Venus rulership of Libra is much more about how we relate to people, and that cold, rather penetrating energy that can be the shadow side of the sign of Virgo could come more sharply into focus. Now, the fact that Mercury is going to be going retrograde and inverting back into the sign of Leo mid-month, and then going direct on the 28th in the sign of Leo, is really interesting, because it suggests that as much as all this optimism is coming to play at the start of this month, we could find ourselves tripped up where there is a lack of definition, a lack of precision, a lack of care in what we say and what we share with people. And that's going to become particularly strong from the 10th through to the 19th, when Mercury goes into an opposition with Neptune. Now that particular opposition peaks in the middle of the month. So if we think that Neptune, potential for distortion, and Mercury really wants to make sure that we get everything very spot on, but that becomes much harder to do. And even when Mercury inverts back into Leo, it's still within range of 3 degrees in opposition with Neptune late in the sign of Pisces. We do, however, have a cazimi on the 19th. Cazimis is when the Sun and the Moon combine. This is an inferior cazimi, or an inferior conjunction, because of the retrograde, and Mercury is actually this side of the Sun. So it's very, very important that when we're grappling with this, we do try to understand how we're sharing talents and our flair, Leo, and it's important therefore that even though the cazimi can turn up the volume of our talents, we still need to deliver them in a very practical, precise and workable way, that very Virgoan energy of Mercury. Now on the 19th we have a full moon in Aquarius, but ironically it forges a tense square to the modern ruler of the sign of Aquarius, Uranus. So I think this is potentially going to be a very disruptive full moon. How will it play out? The Sun in 5 is competing with the Moon in 11. We could find that a lot of people want a piece of us, or we're a little bit sport for choice in terms of what we want to do to express ourselves, Leo, in terms of however people have expectations of how we connect to them, the position of the Moon in Aquarius. Also, the Moon in Aquarius, in a way, is a bit detached. It can be quite rebellious. So when we put the T-square with Uranus between those two positions, it may be something about money, the position of Uranus in Taurus, or value, which causes some disruption around a romantic relationship, a friendship connection, or politics around a group. But on the 22nd, we then get an opportunity to try to clarify things, because the clash with Uranus from the Sun particularly is actually quite long lasting, from the 16th to the 22nd. And the Sun moving into Virgo on the 22nd then helps us to start sifting through what we've been told, what's the reality. On the 28th, Mercury goes direct. Obviously going to be helpful, still not out of its post-retrograde shadow, that's next month, but then beautifully on the 29th, Venus moves into the sign of Libra. And whatever we've experienced this month, if we can try to find some equilibrium by the end of the month, and a lot of it is going to be in terms of our skills as listeners, because from the 8th to the 20th, with Mars and Jupiter really getting closer together and reaching their peak on the 14th, we could experience someone who's very, very dogmatic about their ideas. Or we could meet someone who's very enthusiastic. We may find ourselves more risk-taking in terms of ideas that we're generating and wanting to be very bold and positive about them. But essentially, it's going to be details and how we relate to people by the end of this month that starts to unpack the potential in a really constructive way that is there undoubtedly right at the start of the month. But the key is having a good balance between being positive, go-getting, self-asserting, having self-belief, going for it around more creative and social and even romantic opportunities, but just being aware there could be some snags that are coming our way. So in other words, if we're too optimistic, we're going to end up really feeling a hit, whereas if we're a bit more grounded and pragmatic, we can actually pick our way through this month and emerge from it in a very constructive manner indeed. I hope you've enjoyed this astrology overview. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. Welcome Aries to your in-depth monthly horoscope for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. And as ever, we need to be mindful of your ruler, but also the influences in the sign of Aries. So the big takeout is that your ruler Mars is in the sign of Gemini, which is very quick moving, can be very action orientated, brilliant for expressing our opinions with enthusiasm and passion. But also right at the start of this month, Mars is forging a fantastic link with the Sun. The Sun's in its home sign of Leo. Now, the position of the Sun right at the start of this month is still just in Decan 1. So that's where we get the double energy of the Sun's sub-rulership of the sign. So it is about warmth, it is about radiance, can be about how you interact with people, but also how you're playing and enjoying life. Think about the things that would bring you a real sense of uplift, because that's all really accessible to you at the start of this month, but not least because the action and energy of Mars in the quick moving Gemini links so positively to the Sun in your 5th house. So if you've got things you want to share with people you want to meet up with and have some fun, a great angle right at the start of the month. But also Venus, the planet of relating, in the sign of Leo, it's very glamorous and very much about showcasing the best of ourselves in terms of our personal appearance, and it's in the third decan, which has a real flavour of your ruler of Mars. So that's a very strong position for Venus for you, and it's in a brilliant link with Chiron in your sign. So if there is something that you want to heal around a relationship, perhaps the inference here is, can you take the first step? Are you going to be the one who initiates something? Or if you're wanting to bring healing to yourself, even if you're not in a relationship, you just want to express yourself with a much sunnier vibe, that's a great aspect to have. But also in your sign is the North Node, which of course is going to move, reverse into Pisces next January. It moved into your sign in the middle of July last year. The North Node, or point of destiny in Aries, is really guiding us all to be in touch with our individuality. The total solar eclipse in your sign in the spring was very much linked, as it is, to the nodal patterns, and the North Node here has really given you a once in every 18.6 year opportunity to invest in what makes you different and unique. But there's a conflict, because in the sign of Pisces, which is your 12th house, you're being in some way inhibited, even if it's not necessarily obvious, because that's your sector of worries, retreat, potentially where we are wanting to withdraw, heal, perhaps let go of things from our past that just didn't work out for us. And you know, it's interesting, because that North Node link with the Sun right at the start of this month is brilliant if you do want to go for it. But if you're still processing or discussing things that have had a big impact on you, for example, if you're working through some self-help manuals, you're having some counselling, or you're just quietly ruminating on why something didn't quite work, it may be because at the start of this month, Saturn squares up with the planet of growth and optimism, Jupiter, which creates a kind of limitation. And also we have Neptune in your 12th house, deeply psychological, very much to do with the unseen realm. That's squaring with the moon as we come into this month. So it is possible that you will encounter someone through this month, Aries, who's not terribly honest. So as much as there is that potential for healing, there is the potential to work things through, to be much more dynamic, to really demonstrate all the best of yourself, there are other energies that are less visible that you still need to be mindful of. Also, Venus in the sign of Leo is in a square with Uranus, and we know that when that happens, people can have a desire to have space, and put it its most extreme part of the spectrum, it can be about separations. So what I'd say for you is Uranus in house 2 can be about how we spend money, and because Venus in Leo has a great need to have a bit of class, to manifest ourselves in a stylish way, you could have a desire right at the start of this month to splash out, to get some new fashion items, or to give yourself some kind of makeup. Why not? But also, if you're feeling that you want to be more dynamic with resources and investigate new earning possibilities, that proverbial side hustle that everyone talks about these days, I wouldn't be too hasty, and that square between Neptune and the moon suggests you really need to make sure that any information that you're receiving, you're analysing it in a very dry way, not least because Mercury, which rules Gemini, quick exchanges, is in the sign of Virgo, where it's brilliant for precision, but it's in its pre-retrograde shadow, and it's causing mischief with Pluto. So Pluto's in the part of your scope to do with your friendships, your long-term plan, your group activities, where there can be some big changes going on, but there could be a bit of a nitpicker in there, but a nitpicker who's not necessarily very honest, because as this month goes on and Mercury moves forwards, goes into the retrograde from the 5th, but then retreats backwards, it comes into an opposition at the heart of this month with Neptune. And okay, it's true that Mercury inverses back into the sign of Leo, which on the face of it does have some strength, not least the cazimi of the 19th. But I just am really letting you know that despite the fact that we have that awesome link between the Sun and your ruler at the start of this month, an amazing link between Jupiter and the Sun, which starts on the 3rd, is threaded through the new moon at the 4th, which provides a backdrop for the next month, really giving you a chance to celebrate that risk-taking part of your nature, where you really can be on the front foot and seize in the moment and being very, very bold and optimistic. Just be aware that Venus, the planet of relating, moves into a much more pragmatic location on the 5th as Mercury goes retrograde in the sign of Virgo, and Venus joining Mercury in Virgo. Also, Venus is not at its happiest here. It's known as being in its fall, so it's detrimented. So Mercury retrograde, Venus in its detriment, there could be some kind of that nitpicking that I'm referring to that you do need to be mindful of. Maybe you're the one who's going to start to analyse parts of your situation, maybe around relationships. And as much as you can give someone the benefit of the doubt at the start of this month, for sure, it's not necessarily something that you can keep giving them. And as Venus goes opposite Saturn from the 17th to the 21st, that could be another potential breakpoint, to be honest. Now, we do have on the 15th Mercury inversing back into the fire sign of Leo, and on the 19th, as I mentioned, that cazimi. If there is something you do want to manifest that's very creative and you need to communicate the message, perhaps earlier in the month there could have been a tendency, not saying there will be one that you follow through, of being maybe a little too self-confident or taking something for granted. Try to avoid that potential trap, because the Mercury cazimi gives you the chance to really discriminate. Mercury's great for that. If we use its Virgoan energies well, it helps us to micromanage things in a careful way. But Mercury back in Leo can be quite attached to prideful expression of ideas. Now we have a full moon on the 19th, which also crests up a very difficult relationship between the Sun and Uranus, which really started to come into effect from the 16th, reaches through to the 22nd, but peaks on the 19th when we have the full moon. So for you, the position of the Sun in 5, about play, self-expression, social world, but your individual needs. The moon in the part of your situation to do with friendships and the collective, just like Pluto, but there's disruptive Uranus there. If you see something very differently from someone else, however much your optimism has been guiding you, particularly with Mars, your ruler, in such a stunning alliance with Jupiter through the 8th to the 20th, peaking on the 14th, just be mindful that people don't always openly express how they feel. You can be much more to the point. Makes you easy to be around for me. Aries people, I've got a lot of Aries friends, and they just say, well, why are you doing that? That's daft. And you know where you stand. Not everyone can deal with that kind of stuff. And particularly at work with people that we have to forge alliances with, not necessarily because we like them, even if we do sometimes, but because that's the function of work. It's to do a role. We're not necessarily there to play and to enjoy the social world, although often that can be the case. So just be aware that the nitpicking that could go on this month, which could be basically based on something that's not true, so someone can make an assumption or make an allegation. Remember, Moon square Neptune at the start of the month is gossip central, and also they can then start to propagate a view that's based on a psychological unreality, in other words, what they'd like to believe. So the way you've got to push back this month, Aries, is to keep serving up the facts. If you keep it factual, but also bright and breezy, you're going to fend off any opposition that may come in. Now, the 22nd sees the Sun move into Virgo. If you do want to get fitter, and to be honest, Mars combining with Jupiter has probably seen you earlier in the month being fitter, whether it's dancing on the dance floor to the early hours, or it is getting out and doing something that's very cardio intense, because the sign of Gemini is quick thrusting movements, or it is using your mind in a very active and energized way. What the sun moving into Virgo asks us all to do, it's not the sign of health, as is sometimes alleged. It's the sign of discrimination. It's the sign of purity. So whether it's our diet, I was reading an article the other day about supermarket fruit and veg and how many chemicals are in it that we can never wash out of our systems. Really very concerning stuff. So the position of Virgo can be an opportunity to make a number of small but very influential changes in your life. When I used to work in management, I used to think that if you can improve your gross profit by 5%, reduce your wage cost by 5%, change the mix of the product in some ways, try to make a number of small but influential changes, 5% here, 2.5% there, all those things, whether it's exercise, whether it is nutrition, the type of food that you're cooking, could you cook from scratch rather than using convenience food that we're all tempted by, or the takeaways. A little bit of virtue in the mix will certainly go a long way with the sun in that location. Now Mercury goes direct on the 28th, but of course it doesn't necessarily resolve all its issues. We've got to wait until it gets back to the point that it went into its retrograde, which is next month. So we enter the post-retrograde shadow, but some things can start to move. And the great news, some things that have felt really stuck, but the great news is that Venus, the planet of relating, moves out of the rather stodgy sign of Virgo into the brilliant Libra, which of course it rules. And it forges a trine to Pluto for the first time in our lifetimes. When Venus and Pluto are in positive angles, they really remind us of who the people are in our lives that we can really count on. And we can feel, just, oh my word, I've been friends with this person a long time, and I'm just going to let them know how grateful I am that they're in my life. And of course, Venus can be about money, it can be about presentation, it can be about contracts in some ways. So that link with Pluto could be a shift that starts to go on, but undoubtedly it can be about romance. And there could be someone that we start to connect to through our ideas, or because they share a similar value system to us, and that could be a relationship that could really grow. And it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic only. So through this month, Aries, what an opportunity to be very, very dynamic in the way that you can utterly be, as long as you're very conscious of the activity going on in your 12th house. Principally, Saturn and Neptune are going to be very powerful for you this month. And, it's just the reality of the situation. And if you work with that energy, but also can see the pathway forwards, or you're really investing in the things that excite you and give you a sense of delight and passion, you're really going to have an opportunity towards the end of the month to convert those ideas, those interactions, into something more lasting and more tangible, which could prove to be really, really important around one special alliance as this month draws to a close. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen. But before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. Welcome Taurus to your in-depth monthly horoscope for August 2024 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of your ruler, the glorious Venus, which starts the month in a tense exchange with the free-spirited Uranus located in your sign. What does this mean? Well, Venus in the sign of Leo and the Sun being in Leo, the sign it rules, has really been encouraging you to become much more mindful of your home environment. And because you have got Jupiter and Mars and even the Moon right at the start of this month in your second house very redolent of the energy of your sign. The Moon in the second house is really like the exaltation that the Moon enjoys in Taurus. So there is a sense at the start of this month that you're going to want to invite people around, to spoil them, play mine host, cook a lovely meal, meet up with people who are special to you in a location that's familiar and comforting. You're going to be very aware of your environment at the start of this month. But what about if there is a situation where you feel that your generosity has been perhaps taken a little bit for granted, or perhaps someone in your family situation is not necessarily as attuned to your needs as you would like. And if there is a separation, or there has been a separation in the past, you're going to be really aware of that as this month begins, which may feel a little bit uncomfortable. And part of the reason for that, I feel, Taurus, is the role of Chiron and the North Node in your 12th house. These are very important influences. Chiron actually links in a very positive way to your ruler. However, the North Node is in a terrific link with the Sun. So they're kind of saying to you, the more you can get in touch with your deeper feelings, the more it will make you aware of who is around you on an energetic basis who drains you. And therefore your sensitivity can be higher at the start of this month, but also your desire to feel heard or seen in terms of your sense of value, which is the energy in the sign of Gemini. And you're going to want to communicate that. But also, Mars in the sign of Gemini is forging a brilliant link to the Sun. So if you do want to invest some money in a property or a savings plan or something to do with a renovation or buy some new furnishings or do some home decoration, your drive to crack on and achieve it can be very strong. It's just your sector of friendship and future plans is potentially afflicted by both Saturn and also Neptune. In the case of Neptune, I think it's a very powerful influence for us all, because with the exception of Pluto, it's the closest to a cusp, but in the case of Neptune, it's the closest to the first house cusp for us all collectively. But for you, having Neptune on the anaretic point and squaring up with the Moon means that if there is somebody around you who's not really as genuine as you would need and like, or does take your resources or your generosity for granted, that could be something that really burns you a little bit. And also Saturn, in a harsher way, is in a right angle to Jupiter. So if you are trying to do business with someone who's got a completely different worldview, completely different set of values, whether it's applying for a job, whether it's working for someone who's got their own small business and doesn't really seem to recognize how hard you work and your worth, or what your long-term value could be if they really shaped a relationship with you in a progressive way, all of that can create some issues. So I feel at the start of this month you're very focused on what you're worth, or where you don't feel heard or seen or valued, but also you're focused on family, emotional and nurturing elements of your situation. But it's not all about those things, because Mercury, the planet of communication, is back in a rather playful place in the second zodiac sign it rules of Virgo, but it is clashing with Pluto. So Pluto's in a very influential part of your chart in terms of your connection to the wider world. So if you do want to be a bit more creative around your work particularly, and you're in an organisation which just wants you to stick to the plan, and you don't feel that you can get much out of it in a way, in a personal context, that could close in upon you a little bit right at the start of this month. But your ruler Venus, as I mentioned before, is in a terrific angle to Chiron. So if there are people that really do get you, they really are in your corner, I think they're going to step forwards, but I think it is going to be a bit of a chasm, to be honest. I think you're going to see quite clearly who's for and who's much less for you in the initial part of this month. But then you get a supreme opportunity, not least, first of all, with the new moon in Leo, which forges a very dynamic angle to Jupiter. There could be some good news linked to a property matter or even family. Maybe it's an inheritance, maybe it's knowledge you're gaining that helps you to use your resources in a way which creates security and plans for the long term. But then Venus moves out of your fourth house and into the fifth, technically in full in the sign of Virgo, but it's joining up with Mercury, which goes retrograde on the 5th too, and they meet on the 8th. Now the interesting thing about Mercury going retrograde, we all know, because Mercury is in its pre-retrograde shadow from the start of this month, that Mercury retrogrades can seem to coincide with technological downs. You can't get your money out of your bank, or air traffic controllers will go on strike, or we get industrial relations issues at ports. I remember when there was all the volcanic issues in Iceland many years ago. It's probably about 14 years ago now, and all this ash was coming out everywhere, and loads of flights all over Europe were cancelled because of visibility issues and safety issues, and Mercury for sure was retrograde. So we know, or most of us believe, it's not a fallacy. It's not something that we're thinking is going on and making a connection. But the key is that Mercury in Virgo is about precision, and the 5th house and Venus, which can be very much to do with romance, can also be to do with creativity. What is it that you possess that you could share more effectively with a wider audience? Because maybe the Mercury retrograde is asking you to revisit, rework, recalibrate, reset. Maybe it's not just about your vacuum cleaner packing in, which has been a tried and trusted companion for however long. It's more about how you're thinking. And we all know we can think our reality, and sometimes we find it very difficult not to think things down. There is going to be a challenge to both Venus and Mercury from both Neptune in terms of Mercury, but also Saturn in terms of Venus. So for you, the 11th house, Saturn and Neptune, has created some disappointments. I feel that maybe where you've been connected to someone in a group situation, maybe a friendship, maybe it's a sports team, maybe it's where you have some kind of investment in a belief or a cause that really inspires you. Someone somewhere may have really been a huge disappointment over the last 15 or 16 months because of Saturn. However, what I feel that this month can do in a way is help you to recalibrate the balance in terms of your expectations, but also manage your time a little bit more shrewdly. And by the 15th, as Mercury actually rewinds, it inverts back into your 4th house. If there is something you're trying to do in terms of that physical or practical upgrade at home, maybe is the contractors not being as reliable as you would like, or had to get them back to do some amendments, that's possible. Or also, if you have been thinking a lot earlier in the month about your home and emotional environment, maybe there's something that does need to be revisited. You could find yourself feeling quite sentimental, particularly on the 19th when we have the Mercury cazimi. This one is an inferior conjunction because Mercury's in the retrograde and it's this side of the Sun, but essentially the Sun radiates its energy into the power of Mercury, and when they're closely together and exact, particularly in the natal chart, can confer huge ingenuity onto the subject. So there's an opportunity for you to think very shrewdly and cleverly about a home-based business, a small enterprise, family politics, all that kind of stuff. It's just that from the 10th through to the 19th, Mercury is in an opposition with Neptune. So the information that you're trying to process through that cazimi does need to be where you've checked it out and thought very rationally about how things are. Also, from the 17th to the 25th, Venus is in an opposition with Saturn. maybe there is someone you're really attracted to, but for some reason that's not necessarily clear, they're not quite available, or they've got other constraints. Maybe they live a little far away. Maybe it's a friendship that goes through a bit of a chill wind. Part of it could in some ways be because the combination between Mars and Jupiter, which is very buoyant and very self-assured, could see you score some financial successes from the 8th through to the 20th with some kind of uplift, particularly on the 14th. If someone's jealous about that, that could be teased into the open, sadly. On the 19th, we have an aspect that's been building up between the Sun and Uranus from the 16th through to the 22nd, but exact on the 19th, also works its way into the full moon in Aquarius. Now, Pluto's been really suggesting to you that there may be some big shifts in terms of your worldly connections. You could take on more authority. You may find yourself in a role of a decision maker, even if it's something that you've been resisting somehow or another. Or maybe your way of being in the public eye feels a little bit in some ways challenging, because it could make you feel a little naked in terms of the scrutiny that that can create. And I feel that this particular full moon in Aquarius can bring up some more of those issues. It's about trying to balance what you want in terms of your protected side of your situation. The moon influenced 4th house, which happens to be the Sun in Leo, so you want that part of your life to be enriched, but maybe there's some worldly challenges, but there could be some disruption for your sign, unfortunately, on this full moon. I don't want to say this in a fearful way. I really don't like when astrologers do that. I'm just being truthful, and of course it depends on where you have personal planets or placements in the sign of Taurus. So if you have got them a little later, because this particular full moon is around 27 degrees, it's possible that you may have to flex on something that in some ways makes you feel a little bit on the back foot. But mainly it's because your nature is to like continuity, and that's part of what you're going to really be trying to develop in the early part of the month, and you can do it. It's just that Uranus, slowly but surely, has been a very provocative influence over the last, well, full time since March 2019. And of course, it started its journey in a very abrasive right angle with Mars in your sector of responsibility and worldly interaction. So right back to the middle of May 2018, some kind of big hit may have come your way. And since then, depending on where you've got those placements, Uranus has been pushing you and asking you to release that part of your nature which likes to have quite a calibrated set of routines, because they do make you feel very safe and at ease, and to be more fluid and not quite so rigid. But the problem, of course, is that your sign is based on continuity. It's a fixed sign, so, and Uranus is, of course, in its full in your sign, so it's not been easy. There's been times when, you know, maybe you have expressed yourself in a radically new and fresh way and enjoyed the experience, and at other times you've yearned for how maybe it used to be. So all of those kind of things can culminate a little bit with that full moon. But the suggestion from me, really, if you have got those placements late on, is just flex, because it's when we resist we create tension and aberration. So just flex. We've got 3 fixed placements, and when Leo in the mix, there can always be a bit of pride knocking around, whether it's someone else's or someone else's, you know, need for a lot of attention, which could be something that you might find a bit challenging. But on the 22nd, the Sun moves into a very favoured area for you, very playful one. And also on the 28th, Mercury goes direct. But that move of the Sun into the sign of Virgo is where you can feel more outgoing, more self-assured, more interactive with others. We do, though, have one other late switch. Venus, your ruler, also governs the sign of Libra. Very much more about how we relate, partnerships, harmony, can be to do with presentation, can be a little synthetic, sometimes can appear a bit insincere, but essentially about relationships, but for you there could be an opportunity around a professional relationship where you can actually showcase your talent and be true to your skills in a much better way, because Venus can be about money for its rulership of your sign, but it links for the first time in our lifetimes to Pluto in a very influential way. So you could find yourself enjoying some kind of raise in status or raise in earnings through some kind of new job that actually helps you to express yourself in just the way you want. So to recap, Taurus, this month certainly starts off with a lot of emphasis on money and where you live, how you live there, who with, and the emotional dimension. You do have challenges coming your way from the energies in the sign of Pisces, which could be through friendships and group alliances, and you perhaps being a little too idealistic. But there are huge opportunities this month to have some very good fortune through the new moon, to use Mercury's retrograde to reset something that needs to change, to try to flex as much as you can as this month goes on. You could definitely have a stroke of serendipity around the middle of the month financially, and that new job or opportunity or playful interaction can bring your cosmic month to a close. Welcome Gemini, it's your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month. What we can take from this is that Mars, Jupiter and the Moon are all in your sign. So that's given you enormous encouragement to really manifest your individuality. But there are some challenges as well as some huge opportunities right at the start of August. The opportunity is that Mars and Jupiter are going to come slowly but surely together. That's going to be exact on the 14th of this month, but they're really going to supercharge you to really direct your thrust towards something that you can feel really personally invested in. So very much you need to be at the heart of things. But right at the start of the month, there is a square between the Moon in your sign and the dreamy, drifting Neptune. And some think about your professional situation or worldly interaction, or ironically, something about your home situation may just not be creating quite the perfect conditions to put your foot to the floor in the way that Mars and Jupiter would really like you to be able to do. The reason for this is Neptune in the 10th house means that you could need to connect with people in positions of influence, but the information that you're seeming to get back may not be particularly clear. Also Saturn, also in Pisces, along with Neptune, that's squaring up with Jupiter. Jupiter's very much about self-confidence. Saturn's very much about where we feel restraint. Perhaps it's someone that you're interacting with who doesn't quite get the magic of some of your ideas. But equally, because Mars in your sign is squaring up with your ruler Mercury, which is in the other sign it rules of Virgo, and in its pre-retrograde shadow as we enter this month, it may be your personal home or family circumstances which aren't quite creating the conditions to move forwards at quite the pace you would like. So on the face of it, it looks incredibly bright and exciting for you, that combination of energy in your sign, but it just suggests that you may need to inch your way into the opportunities. But there could be someone that you're connected to, a friend, who can be very helpful and very supportive to you. Now that's because the North Node forges a brilliant link to the Sun. The Sun in Leo is in its home sign, but in the third house for you, it's very redolent of the energy of Gemini. It's about sharing ideas. But that North Node position that the Sun's linking to suggests your instincts around certain connections, even if you're experiencing some blockages, delays, or frustrations from some people, there can be others who really totally receive what you're saying in a very aligned way. Also, there's a beautiful link between the Moon and Chiron. If there is something that you want to talk about with someone that's very personal, there's someone in your circle of friends who can actually be quite the asset. But then again, it may be your sensitivity and supportiveness that's going to be important too. Just be aware, however, that with Uranus, the planet of surprises, of restlessness, of independence, still tucked up in your 12th house and in a clash with Venus as we come into this month, rushing anything, particularly around your interactions in terms of romance, is not going to be in your best interest. So that gives you a flavour of how things are set as we come into the month. But the positive side of it is the Sun is in a great link with Mars through week 1. So if there is something that you really feel very clear about, and you're not going to let these outside restraints or people in some ways not quite getting what you're trying to do or damning you with faint praise, if you really believe in what you want to do, there can be some traction to be gained. Also on the 4th, we have the new moon in the sign of Leo, which for you helps you to showcase your ideas, your brilliance, your sparkle, your effervescence over the following month. But it's also linking to Jupiter in your sign. So once again, the opportunity to be very individualistic is giving you a platform to showcase this, as long as you're aware that there could be some restraints. Now on the 5th, Venus moves out of Leo and into the sign of Virgo. It's not its best location, to be honest, and Mercury, your ruler, on the same day goes into its retrograde. Now Mercury retrograde in the 4th house could mean that if you've got some contractors due to come in and to do some work for you, perhaps there's going to be some delays or glitches. And if you are thinking about your family relationships, it could be a good time to actually have a further think about something that has felt stuck. We all know that Mercury retrograde can cause some glitches, but it definitely has some opportunities, not least by the 8th, when Venus and Mercury align brilliantly. So if you have been thinking about that new business, something working from home, or taking what has been a hobby up until now and shaping it into something new, that can be a great platform too. And the effervescence of Jupiter applying to the Sun goes on through to the 11th, peaking on the 9th. So your ideas can gain currency, but I feel that that Mercury retrograde and Venus moving into Virgo again is asking you to check out that things feel right, which is perfectly understandable. I think if there has been a snag, try to take this in your stride. Try to be philosophical. I have a friend, a psychic, who's a Gemini, and she often says that rejection can be protection. So if something doesn't work out, there is a bigger reason. And you have an opportunity by the Mercury Cazimi of the 19th to frame your ideas in a much clearer way, even if it means that you've had to flex and just adapt in some way, which is often the case when Mercury retrograde does apply. But by the 19th, we have a full moon in your sister air sign of Aquarius. So this is an opportunity to talk something through, but you may find that something that's been bugging you just in the background of your situation could come into the open over the last 2 weeks of this month and just into the start of September as well. And that's because the full moon is in a T-square with Uranus. So if you've been feeling very frustrated, not heard, the chance for you to really say how you feel is provided at this juncture of the month. On the 22nd, however, the Sun moves into Virgo too. Now, the Sun in Virgo is a really good thing in a way because it gives us a chance just to pause. There's been a lot of frenetic energy in the third house, and the thrust of Mars and Jupiter in your sign really making you very determined. Now's the chance to just take a breath, let things just settle and percolate through you. Also on the 28th, Mercury, your ruler, goes direct in Leo. The 29th, however, sees Venus move into your 5th house. And as it does, it forges a quite magical link to Pluto. You're going to find out something by the end of this month about how someone feels about you. It could be around a romantic situation, but it equally could be around a creative opportunity that's linked to publishing or knowledge or higher education. Your ability to work with people very skillfully, which is definitely a big part of your nature. You can flex, get on with lots of different types of people. So even if you do encounter some stodgy characters this month, either professionally or in your home or emotional or family situation, by the end of August, Gemini, I can absolutely assure you, you get a great chance to really compel people with the power of your personality. But it will be important as the month comes to a close, with the Sun moving into the sign of Virgo, that things feel right. But if you're wanting to change something about where you live, whether it's redecoration or whether it's moving altogether, that's going to be a really important juncture for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Cancer to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen. But before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. As this month begins, your ruler, the Moon, is compromised, to be honest, by the energy of Neptune. Neptune's been incredible for you, I feel, since 2012, giving you a real opportunity to expand your thinking and consciousness, perhaps even education, in so many ways. But the square with the Moon at the start of this month suggests that one of the things you need to be conscious of throughout August is that things that ordinarily you might be able to turn your other cheek to could just get under your skin a little bit. Also, of course, at the start of this month, you do have Mars and Jupiter in your 12th house, which can be to do with reflection and in some ways needing to step back a little bit. But the 12th house can also be a brilliant area for planning, researching, taking time out to think very deeply. Can be also to do with healing. If you are someone who is psychic or works as a therapist, the combination of Mars and Jupiter, and remember Jupiter can be about knowledge, that are going to come together in an exact conjunction on the 14th, suggests that you can grow your consciousness hugely with their help this month, or perhaps even grow your practice too. But that energy between the Moon and Neptune does require some care. And also as we come into the month, Saturn, the other player in your sister water sign of Pisces, along with Neptune, is squaring off with Jupiter. And this suggests, therefore, that you could encounter someone, perhaps it's going to be about a contractual matter or a legal matter, who may seem to be a little bit more attritional than actually they need to be, which also could get under your skin a little bit. But the Sun and Venus initially, as we start this month, are in the part of your situation to do with finance, self-worth, but also the enjoyment of the good things in life. But Venus too is checked by Uranus at the start of this month. Uranus is in your 11th house. It's probably not, therefore, the best of months to be too speculative when it comes to investments, because Venus can be about money as well as relating, but particularly for you in the second solar house. Whereas Uranus in the 11th house has really been urging you over recent years to take a more radical approach to your future, your ideas, and even your connections. But all of it is very much in a process of change because of that cluster of energy in house 12. And one of the things that Mars can do there is create some tensions around past issues which you may have felt had been resolved. So you may find that your subconscious could be powerfully activated. Now, despite that, Cancer, the Sun actually forges a glorious link to Mars at the very start of this month. How I feel that can work for you, there could be a connection that comes through with someone you used to work with. It could be a boss type figure, someone influential, or your past experiences, knowledge, and work can in some ways be restructured in a way which gives you a fresh opportunity. But at the very start of the month, there probably is the need for you to keep doing that background research and, in a way, to be honest, not be too overly and outwardly confident. Now, that's not to say that I want you not to have a sense of self-assurance. It's just that I feel that you're going through a process of refining things and perhaps bringing some things in your situation from the past finally to a complete point of closure. It's going to get easier for you as the month goes on, but on the 4th we do have a new moon. If you did want to supercharge your financial situation, the knowledge that Jupiter can bring in its alliance with the Sun and the Moon is really going to be very powerful. And of course, the Sun in Leo, which it rules, we could argue this is the most potent new moon from a Sun perspective of the whole year. One of the things that you could find is that if you are feeling a little bit out of kilter, or there are some complex issues that you're needing to work through, one of the things you could find rather hard or more difficult to resist is any calorific goodies. Jupiter in the 12th house could see you wanting to feed something that is more psychological, particularly with the Sun and the Moon in house 2. But on the 5th, Venus switches homes. It moves into the sign of Virgo. It's technically debilitated here, but for you it gives you an opportunity to express yourself and use your words carefully. Ironic, really, because Mercury, the planet of communication, goes into its formal retrograde that day, also in house 3. Now, the 3rd house governs things like text messages, emails, anything to do with software, maybe even the hardware that you use. If it's a while since you've decluttered your technical devices, this would be a great opportunity to do it. We know that Mercury retrograde can cause some issues, so if you're booking anything or buying anything online, that's where there could be some potential challenges for you. But you can turn it to your advantage and think, what's the 3rd house about? Well, the 3rd house is about quick communications. Is it an opportunity to catch up on someone that I haven't been in touch with for some while? Or can I do something which just cleans up that part of your situation when it comes to the aforementioned technologies? Now, the position or the angle between the Sun and Jupiter, which can be very lucky, peaks on the 9th. But it's on the 8th, just before then, the Mercury and Venus come into an exact alliance. Don't underestimate, just because Mercury's in a retrograde, that you could have a very important discussion. Maybe it is going to be with a neighbour, maybe it's going to be around a business idea, could even be with a sibling, which is also ruled by house 3. and maybe it's something that's needed to be said for some while. You could also find yourself wanting to acquire some new kit, whether it's the latest smartphone, a laptop. And the third house, funnily enough, can be about bicycles. So if you've long wanted an electric bike, very third house too, very Gemini-like, a great opportunity, because in the sign of Virgo, what you're looking to do is bring some virtue. So if you can move around quicker and more efficiently, that would be a fine time to do it. So don't just see Mercury retrograde as a time to pause everything in your situation. However, what we can't deny is that Mercury does go into a tricky opposition with Neptune. And so therefore, even though your words can carry more charm and persuasiveness in that alliance with Venus, which peaks on the 8th, you still need to make sure that if you're discussing anything more factual, Neptune's ability to distort and shift our perspective, or anyone else's, is going to be heightened. Also, Venus goes into a clash with Saturn from the 17th to the 21st. That could be a key date if you do need to discuss something a bit tricky, whether it's a contract, whether it's something that you've wanted to say to someone for some while. Choose your words with a great deal of care. In the most extreme situation, Venus opposite Saturn could bring a relationship to a close. On the 15th, however, Mercury inverses back into Leo. So those finances, if you have been talking about something, maybe you're going to have to talk some more or think some more. But Mercury does forge a very impressive cazimi on the 19th. A cazimi is when the Sun and Mercury are totally unified. So as we see it from planet Earth, Mercury is this side of the Sun because it's what's known as an inferior conjunction because of the retrograde. The Sun amplifies the brilliance of Mercury. Mercury in Leo can be prideful, so important not to get too attached to our egos around our ideas, but equally it could just see you glow up an idea that maybe you thought was getting snagged and snared and was encountering these opposition energies in the sign of Pisces, but you can start to make sense of it. The full moon, however, on the 19th does forge a T-square with Uranus. Uranus in that 11th house, very much about being more idealistic, thinking long term, trying to free up yourself in some ways. But the second house position of the Sun and the 8th of the Moon, along with Pluto, suggests that anything to do with who owns or contributes what, if there is a little bit of a disagreement, it could come up and come into the open in the last phase of this month. That said, the Sun moves into Virgo on the 22nd, and that can see us speeding up. On the 28th, Mercury goes direct from its retrograde. If there has been a financial snag, it can start to be resolved. But Venus moving into its second home sign of Libra on the 29th, forging an amazing link with Pluto, suggests if you are someone who does work from home, this could be a positive time for you. Also, if you're trying to get on the property ladder or rent somewhere, good news can come up. Your use of resources can be very skilled. Some kind of big shift can occur at the end of the month. So you can see that this month begins with the Sun and Venus in the second house as being very much initially about your self-worth, your values and money. But there is that energy in the 12th house you just cannot ignore in the guise of Mars, Jupiter and the Moon, which could make you more sensitive. So there may be some subterranean strands of this month that you do need to deal with, but I feel that you will start to gain the traction despite the retrograde to Mercury by the 22nd and start to make more sense of all of this. But it's really, I feel, for you Cancer, understanding that as much as there has been a lot of dynamism around your public role, around your friendships, this is a part of the year when it's what you value and who you value and the sincerity of key players that's really important to you, and your communication in any part of your situation is going to be very, very important, not just because of the Mercury retrograde, but because of the two players in Pisces, which can make you more idealistic. So the best way to deal with that energy is to make sure that you're factually right on the ball, whether it is around a personal relationship or business situation. Stay very sharp around those areas, and as the month comes to a close, things can start to really ebb in your direction. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Leo to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Sun, the Ascendant or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. And as ever, we need to be mindful of your ruler, the Sun. And the Sun starts this month in the first decan of your sign, which means there's a double resonance of the energy, the radiance that the Sun gives you. But it's also forging a truly charismatic angle to the North Node. The North Node, or point of destiny, is very much about where we're nudged towards, particularly the moving North Node as opposed to our own natal North Node. And this one at the present time is suggesting that change and expansion and adventure are all calling out to you. Now, if you really want to manifest a part of your situation, which means expressing your individuality in a more effective way, Mars, the ruler of Aries, very much to do with our identity and desires, is also forging a fantastic link to the Sun and also the North Node as you come into this month. Further, also in Gemini like Mars, Jupiter, the planet of fortune, is going to be linking up with the Sun from the 3rd through to the 9th exactly in a wonderful sextile, which can prove to be very lucky for you. So as you sweep into the new month, Leo, there's lots to be excited about. And of course, there is the new moon in your sign on the 4th. New moons are an opportunity to refresh, and the new moon in our own sign, particularly with the Sun being the ruler of your sign, means that it could be argued that the Leo new moon, from a Sun perspective, from a solar perspective, is the most potent of the whole year, and it's blessed by Jupiter, the planet, which gives us a sense of self-belief, of confidence, assurance, but critically, because of the position of Mars and Jupiter in your 11th house in Gemini, it means your connections to others can be hugely enriched this month. What's not to like? Well, it's just that as you come into this new month, the position of Venus in your sign, which has been giving you a desire to manifest your creativity, but also perhaps you've given yourself some kind of glamorous makeover, and that could go on. You could do some more of that on the back of the new moon in your sign. Well, that is checked by Uranus as we come into this new month. Uranus is in the part of your situation to do with how you connect to the world. Is there something creative that you're attracted to that you felt a little bit unsure of taking the next step into? Maybe it means breaking free of something that's been safe, familiar and comfortable. Yes, your sign possesses huge charisma and sparkle and personality, but you are a fixed sign, so sometimes change is something you can resist. Uranus has been pushing you for some time, since 2019 full time, to think about shifting the way you connect to the wider world. So if you are someone who has an artistic side to your nature, if there's something that you have in your repertoire that's rather different and fresh, don't hold back from sharing it as you come into this month. If, however, you work in an environment where you're expected to fit in with what's expected, that could be a more intimidating aspect. The other thing to tell you about at the start of the month is that Mercury, in the part of your situation to do with everyday finance, is in its pre-retrograde shadow and is checked by Mars. So you can't be too idealistic about resources. But what I would also say is the moon in the very friendly 11th house is in a little bit of a tricky right angle with Neptune. If you are talking about money, and it is about friendship or working collaboratively on something where you all pitch in with different skills or assets, I really would get everything written down so everybody knows exactly what their role is. Otherwise, it could be something that causes some issues. I also wouldn't be too keen to share or lend any money to someone that you don't know very well. So I would keep business and pleasure a little bit apart as you come into this new month. But that new moon on the 4th, it's only 2.5 degrees away from a perfect sextile to Jupiter. Jupiter can give us a sense that things can work out well. It's going to be in your sector of alliances for around about another 11 months. So the opportunity to build up your connections is very strong. You need to feel, particularly with the Sun in your sign and initially Venus, that you can be at the heart of things. But I feel that what having Mars and Jupiter in your 11th house as the month begins can help you to be a little bit more collaborative. It doesn't all have to be based on your own individual input. You can work with people closely. In fact, Mars and Jupiter are going to be forging a fantastic link which peaks on the 14th. So if you do want a more sociable August, get together with people. That's a wonderful alliance to have. But I'm going to give you some other really good news, because on the 5th, Mercury may go retrograde, but on the same day, Venus, the planet of relating, but also of money, moves into your second solar house. It does come into a conjunction with the retreat in Mercury on the 8th. That could be a day when you get some good financial news. But I want to temper this a little bit, to be honest, because what's going to happen is that Mercury is going to go opposite Neptune in your 8th house of shared resources, and Venus is going to go opposite Saturn. If there is somebody that you're needing to work with on a contract, shared resources, or perhaps in a romantic context, you're trying to take that next step into a more invested future, financially or emotionally or even intimately, those oppositions can be a bit challenging. One of the reasons for that is Neptune's ability to distort, and Saturn, of course, can be very restraining. So if you are thinking about getting closer to someone, or you're working together, even though there is this huge potential to work in that very cooperative way, it needs to be right. And the thing with the energy of the Mercury retrograde is it's asking you to make sure that you're all over the details, because if you are, you'll be fine. If you're too overconfident, which is possible with the Sun sextile with Jupiter, that could cause an issue. Ironically, on the 15th, Mercury inverts back into your sign. We then have a Cazimi on the 19th, when the Sun and Mercury are perfectly together, unified in the sky. The magic of the Sun brings even greater resonance to the talent that Mercury has. So Mercury in your sign is about you'll need to get ideas moving. If you try to get something moving earlier in the month and then hit that stumbling block around finances, perhaps in terms of trying to raise finance, perhaps your bank wasn't quite as supportive as you would like, or you've rethought your idea a little bit, all this can come up to the boil on the back of the full moon in your opposite sign on the 19th. But there could be some surprise developments over the following 2 weeks. What I feel that this full moon is about is understanding that there may be someone that you have to collaborate or work with who sees something very differently to you. but the way this comes out could be very sudden, jarring, unexpected. Still, on the 22nd, the Sun moves into Virgo. So if there is something that you've been having to amend and revisit, check through again with Mercury's retrograde, you can still find traction later in the month if you can flex. The thing with Mercury, particularly in that cazimi in your sign, is not to be too prideful about your ideas. Sometimes we do have to understand that however much we want to go forwards on our terms, sometimes it's how our ideas are received, or even if the idea is absolutely brilliant, other people just aren't ready for it. They can't quite see it, which can cause enormous frustration. But if you've got a brilliant idea that you really believe in, this full moon saying to you, a bit like that Venus square with Uranus at the start of the month, don't hold back from continuing to invest your time and energy into it. The 28th, however, sees Mercury go direct, which I feel will help to ease the logjam. And on the 29th, Venus moves into Libra, which she rules. She loves being in this location. You're going to have a very, very important conversation as this month draws to a close. If you're single, it could have a romantic dimension, but equally it could be about trying to receive that support and getting better feedback than you felt you got earlier in the month. But there's certainly an awful lot of positivity at the start of this month, Leo. And your ability to use your personality power and your sheer force of your drive is really very amped up early on. But it's just around the financial side of things. An initial piece of good news may need to be tempered by the fact that something isn't quite as expected. Flex, keep the dialogue going, and I feel you will get to where you want to be as the month comes to a close. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Virgo to your in-depth monthly horoscope for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. There's something of a paradox at the start of this month, Virgo. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart, which is going to be very influential. Not least, your ruler Mercury is back home with you, but is in a pre-retrograde shadow as the month begins. Now, I'm sure you know that Mercury is going to go on to slam the brakes on the 5th, but on the same day, you are going to have Venus joining you, which is a real opportunity. Later in the month, on the 22nd, the Sun will join your sign too. So all of those strands give you a chance to actualize and bring to life any individual hopes and plans you have. But the paradox is that right at the start of the month, there's a cluster of energy in the sign of Gemini, which can see you raise your profile and achieve greater acclaim if you really want to seize the moment. But it's all competing with the energy in house 12, which is where the Sun and Venus start this month. So on the screen you can see in the event chart, the Sun in the sign of Leo is at home. It actually forges a brilliant link to the point of destiny, the North Node, as the month begins, but also Mars. If you are wanting to take that next step forwards in terms of a big goal or ambition, it is going to be really important that you do some deep research, that you really are prepared for the amount of attention that you could garner. Because the irony really is that with the Sun and initially Venus in your 12th house, there's another part of you that may actually want to stay out of the limelight just at the time that you could be pushed into it. So right at the start of the month, the energies in the sign of Gemini, very powerful. And Gemini for you, the 10th house, is where people become more conscious of you. Jupiter's there, it's going to be there for the next near to a year. So there's definitely chances of serendipity when it comes to your employment prospects. But also if you've got something that you feel really excited about, that you want to reach out and connect with more people around, that certainly can be encouraging, particularly because Jupiter forges a brilliant link to the Sun from the 3rd through till the 11th of this month, peaking on the 9th, but threaded through the new moon of the 4th. So what's not to like? Well, it's just that as this month begins, Mercury, as I mentioned before, is in its pre-retrograde shadow, but it's also conflicted by Mars. So you could actually feel quite tense about what to do. Also, you may experience or come into contact with someone who you feel is quite assertive in their approach, which could see you feeling a little unsure. Or maybe someone's going to experience you as wanting everything on your terms. But as the month begins, the position of Neptune and Saturn in your sector of relationships is linking up very strongly to that energy in the 10th house. So how you interact with people, how you relate to people is going to be a big part of the potential success of this month or not. That position of Saturn for the last 16, 17 months in your 7th house has made you think differently about how you're viewed by people. It may seem that other people have been harsher in their judgment, more abrasive, more critical, which has been difficult to take. But let's just go to that new moon on the 4th. So a 12th house new moon is asking us to engage with the parts of life that many of us can find ourselves a bit reluctant to do. So it's the subconscious, it's the psychological domain, can be to do with healing, can be to do with withdrawal. But if you are someone who wants to work on a business, for example, that does assist people, perhaps in a care environment, or perhaps a psychological way, or perhaps to do with a therapeutic practice, or perhaps even to do with nurturing people through psychological insights, you really can make big progress this month on the back of that new moon. But Venus moving into your sign on the 5th is something to really celebrate, because Venus in the 12th house, particularly in its square to Uranus at the very start of the month, could see you wanting to separate from something that's not working for you. And it could be a romance, to be honest. But equally it could be a job or an organisation where you feel thwarted, penned in. There's been a lot of energy in your 9th house of late. So the idea of being a freer, more adventurous spirit has been appealing to you. And in some way or another, your work or lifestyle structure has been under review because of Pluto being in your 6th house since the 21st of January. So Venus moving into your sign brings you into the present, but could potentially shut the door on something that hasn't worked out around a relationship. Professional, personal, could be around a friendship situation or a romance. And Venus moving into your own sign, even though it's technically in its fall here, gives you an opportunity to think about your personal appearance. If you are someone who's a dedicated follower of fashion, maybe even with that part of your nature, this could be a chance to make some tweaks. But ironically, on the same day, Mercury goes into its retrograde. The two meet in an exact conjunction on the 8th. If you did want to have a discussion with someone or meet on a date, that could be an auspicious day. But Mercury retrogrades obviously have quite the reputation. But you know, they are a chance to reset, recalibrate, rethink our approach. The 1st house is about what we're getting out of a situation as an individual. The 10th house energy that manifests at the start of this month through the guise of the Moon, Jupiter and Mars is asking you to be more self-assured about how you link to the world. And maybe in some ways you've been giving away your power somewhat by being too much of a giver to situations where you've been very diligent, very dedicated, providing a role that's very calibrated, organised, and that's all good. But if it's been in some ways pulverising your passion, the fact that Mercury is retrograde in your own sign can give you a lot of food for thought. But Mercury then goes opposite Neptune, and Venus then goes opposite Saturn. So if you're trying to do something different, somebody close to you might not like it one little bit, because they're used to you providing or being a certain way. But then Mercury inverts out of your sign on the 15th, which could deepen the plot. You may feel that with these energies that you're receiving in, that you actually want some time to really think deeply about what you want. If you can go away and have some complete rest, perhaps even go to a retreat, I think that would be very healing for you. The Cazimi of the 19th could see you have, however, a really brilliant spark of ingenuity, and could see you look at an old issue in a new and fresh way. It could come from someone who actually has a great gift for psychology and can talk to you in a way that you feel is supportive and helps you to perhaps see your situation in a fresh light. The full moon, which occurs on the 19th, however, does suggest that if something isn't working for you around your professional situation, in particular, that desire for a greater freedom, which has been building up for some months, just gets all the more direct. And as the sun moves into your sign on the 22nd, this can really start to embolden you. The 28th sees Mercury go direct. All that soul searching is beginning to work its way out and will make sense later in September. But on the 29th, there could be some seriously good news around the financial matter. So if you apply for a job towards the end of this month, it could be just what you need. So essentially, your role in life, how you connect to the wider world, how people view your talents, abilities, is a big starting point of this month. But the paradox is you may need time to work at an inward level in terms of deciding what you really want for yourself, despite other people in some ways wanted to push you in a particular direction or offering you opportunities, may not be quite what fits for you. And then there could be some people, as you take more control over your situation, who are resistant to the new set, the new posture that you're taking. But then as the sun moves into your sign, you're really going to feel a lot more self-confident and can get on the front foot as this month comes to a close and really start to bring in the energy that both Mars and Jupiter give you an opportunity to work with. Because by the middle of this month, there could be a big meeting you have where you can come across in such a dynamic way and someone can be so impressed by you. So it's not so much that you don't have any control over this month. I feel you do. It's more there's going to be a number of different options, but you're going to want to take your time to pick them over and decide what's truly right for you. Someone close to you might not like the one you choose, but by the end of the month, what you will find is you'll be ready to go with what suits you, even if they don't like it, and that can create some tensions in that particular relationship. But then you'll be ready to seize the limelight, the acclaim that you truly deserve. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Libra to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we can be mindful of your ruler, Venus, and I will explore that with you shortly. But the big picture as you come into this month is the Sun and your ruler are in the most sociable part of your chart, house 11. But that's also where we connect to people, we network, and we plan for the future. It's also where we can be most aspirational beyond the physical realm. But you also have a cluster of energy in your sister air sign of Gemini, which is very much to do with being more adventurous, potentially traveling, looking at opportunities for higher education, and just bringing some freshness and spontaneity into your world. Now then, let's just be mindful of the role of your ruler Venus. So it is coming to the end of its journey through Leo at the start of this month, but it is tested by the disruption that Uranus can bring. So they're in a square as we start this month. Now Uranus continues as it has since 2019 full time in your 8th house, which can be about deep psychological change, but it also can be where we're most devoted and invested. But that's tricky with Uranus because Uranus in a way is seeing us resist any closeness and investment which doesn't quite feel right, because Uranus essentially is about getting in touch with what is most authentic. So as much as there may be a friend or someone you're drawn to romantically, and you may actually find the spark is very strong at the start of this month, just ask yourself if it's really what you want. Now on the other hand, if you're in a relationship and you've been in it for a long time and it's not actually meeting your needs, this can be a very powerful month, and it could see you want to break free. But it really is your core, because the energy in the sign of Gemini can be about freedom. And because of the energy in Leo is about your future, the two have to work well together. So if there is someone you really like, and there could be quite a charismatic connection, not least because the North Node and Chiron continue in your 7th house of relating, and they're actually blessed at the start of this month by the Sun, also by Mars, but also by Venus linking to the position of Chiron. So if there is someone that you do feel that there's something to work on with, I think the principal theme has got to be truth. There has to be a sense that your values are being met, and that's because of the energy in Gemini, the 9th house, and that's very much to do with feeling that there is some clarity and purpose and meaning in our connections. So that's the backdrop as we go into the new month. But there is some awkward stuff, to be honest. The moon in your 9th house, very much about travel and those higher truths, is clashing with the position of Neptune, logical area at the start of this month, clashing with Mars in house 9. So as much as those energies on the face of it in Gemini point towards freedom, independence and travel and exploring, and the energy in Leo is very much about long-term connections, your highest hopes, and potentially friendships, there are some complexities in this situation because of the players in Pisces, Saturn and Neptune, and because Mercury in Virgo, your 12th house. And that's really the story at the start of this month. However, there is cause for great optimism because the Sun forges an amazing link with Mars right at the start of this month. And if there is someone that you do feel very aligned to, that combination can give you a lot of self-belief and confidence, even quite a lot of extra energy to make that step forwards. Also, Jupiter, the planet of growth, is linking brilliantly to the Sun from the 3rd through to the 9th and feeds into a glorious new moon on the 4th, which provides a backdrop for the following month. If there is something that you're really inspired by, maybe it's a an interest or a hobby that's been emerging for you. It could be a group of people. Maybe it is a social meetup. Maybe it's a collective that you find very inspirational. That inspiration can really be enhanced with the help of Jupiter for sure. But then Venus moves your ruler into your 12th house on the 5th. Now, you may know that Venus is in its full in Virgo. So what happens here is that Virgo, of course, can be very precise. It can be very cool. Venus relies on the charm of your sign and the sultry sensuality of the other sign she rules, of Taurus. So in Virgo, it's a bit picky, but it could see you if you're not happy and you do feel that someone in some way is expecting far too much from you and not giving much back. That could be an important development, because Venus then goes on to go into an opposition with Saturn between the 17th and the 25th. So whether it's a work relationship, a friendship, or the romance, if there is something that has been difficult to get into the open and someone's resisting, the part of you that wants to shake things up, be more dynamic, be more dashing, if someone's very stuck in their ways and holding you to account in some ways, whether it is a job or a relationship, with also Mercury going retrograde on the 5th, that can see you rethink your psychological perspectives. And that too goes opposite Neptune. But it also means that from the 10th to the 19th, you could be told something that's not true. Because Mercury is about communication, Neptune can distort. But the position that they're in means that as more you try to get to the truth, Mercury and Venus in 12, or perhaps withdraw a little bit to find out what you really want, the more that someone could be evasive or very critical. Saturn in 6, Neptune in 6. Just be ready for that. However, there is a fantastic alliance between Mars and Jupiter that builds up this month and really peaks on the 14th. And if you are going to travel somewhere and you want to do something more daring and you want to also break free of the crushing sense that you always have to be the good egg, the person who, will be very responsible for people, which has really been emphasized by that energy in Pisces. And of course, the 4th house energy you've had with Pluto has also been very, very deep and difficult to get through since 2008. So the combination between Mars and Jupiter could see you very much in the mood to think, that's it, the 12th house energy with Venus and Mercury, I've had enough. I'm always bending to other people's needs, trying to give them what they want, but now I'm going to do something for me. And that could see you jet off somewhere, go away for a long weekend, do something that's more physical, more rugged, more adventurous, or it could be that you're going to sign up for some kind of course which gives you a lot of extra information or knowledge, or even a new diploma or degree, because Jupiter can be about knowledge, but Mars can be about desire. But on the 15th, Mercury inverts back into Leo, and in a way, I actually think this is a good thing. If you set your stall out, made it clear about what you want to accept around certain situations, someone may try to woo you back, whether it's a boss, a friend, or that relationship. Just be aware that if it is going to work out, it really has to be in a way that you feel very confident that your need for stimulation and change and some excitement is really going to be met. And on the 19th, there's a Cazimi, which despite the retrograde the Sun amplifies the values of Mercury. And this can give you a huge insight into what you really want from your future. But then on the 19th, the full moon in Aquarius, your sister air sign, is a choice. And the choice could be between a particular group of people or a particular person you've been attracted to. But because Uranus is applying to both positions in a T-square, if it does require you to give in to something where you're not feeling you're getting something out, I think you may decide to spin out and do something for you. And that's entirely understandable, and particularly because the moon being in Aquarius and Pluto being there too is about your need your needs as opposed to the needs of the group. But then on the 22nd, the Sun does move into Virgo. On the 28th, Mercury goes direct in Leo, but the move of the Sun into Virgo does suggest that you may do some deep thinking towards the end of this month. But I want to reassure you, Venus is joining your sign, your ruler, on the 29th. And whatever you go through, whether it is about a job, an interest, a group of people, a friendship, a love affair, whatever you go through, it's all going to become much more clear to you by the end of the month what your true pathway forwards is about. And do you know, as the month comes to a close, Mars and Jupiter are still pushing you to be more explorative, but this time it can be much more on your terms. So essentially the energy that's seesawing across the sign of Virgo through Mercury and Venus, and then ultimately the Sun, and the position of Saturn and Neptune in house 6, where you feel very responsible and obligated. The 12th house is much more psychological. That competes with the bright warmth and radiance that definitely permeates into your situation at the start of this month. So there could be some deep searching, soul searching as this month goes on. The Mercury retrograde could be particularly psychologically snaggy. You may feel that certain people aren't keeping you in the loop or staying in touch, which could be very disappointing. But you're going to get your hand on your life tiller in a very firm way by the end of this month, and whoever is truly worthy of you will be revealed as this month comes to a close. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Scorpio to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen. But before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm sharing your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be aware of your two rulers of Mars and Pluto. Pluto's just in your 4th house still, very much about transformations around home, family and emotions. But Mars is in the very deep and passionate 8th house. The host is the light and quick moving sign of Gemini. If you are someone who's interested in business, entrepreneurship, or making more of your resources, Mars and Jupiter, the planet of growth, are going to offer you some really positive opportunities this month. But also at the start of the month, we need to be mindful of the role of the Sun and the Moon, the luminaries. The Sun is right high in the sky, the 10th house, along with Venus, the planet of relating, but also money. Now, the position of the Moon, like Mars and Jupiter, is in Gemini, but that is in a testing right angle to Neptune at the beginning of this month. If there is someone that's intriguing, fascinating, mesmerizing you at the start of this month, make sure as this month goes on that you're a little bit cagey and maybe even to the point of wary about how this may go, because there's such a lot of energy at the start of this month, which is so encouraging. And because you can naturally be very shrewd and very astute in how you approach things, and that could work out for you in a very positive way this month in terms of marshalling those resources. Relationships can, of course, pull at our heartstrings in very complex ways. So as the month begins, that alliance or connection between the Moon, the 8th house, can see you more aware of the psychological dimension of where you're are drawn to. But the position of Neptune in the 5th house is your fantasy position, if you like. I'm not saying you are personally fantasizing, but for Scorpios generally, since 2012, Neptune's been giving you opportunities at times to really think about how you really like your love life or social life, or even your creative strands to work out. But Saturn, over the last 15-16 months, has been bringing a cool wind to this area. And guess what? Saturn is in a square with Jupiter at the start of this month. So as much as Mars, your traditional ruler, and Jupiter link perfectly by the 14th of this month, great for business, making the most of your long-term resources, anything to do with investments, property could go well for you. Just be mindful that the part of your scope that's to do with being more speculative, more to do with pushing forwards, is actually impacted by the cool energies of Saturn and sometimes the rather confusing energies of Neptune. So that 5th house is what we really yearn. The 8th house is desire and deep connections, and can of course be to do with transformations. But of course, because the sun is so high in the sky, it may be that your thinking is around your work or how you're perceived in the wider world. If you are wanting to raise your profile, the sun forges a quite sensational link to Mars, but from the 3rd of the month, and particularly on the 9th, exactly with Jupiter, the planet of growth. How good is that? So if you've got something that you've got to offer that you're really invested in, and you have a lot of knowledge around, a lot of experience and skills has evolved over a long period of time, you can pull people to you who are going to be interested in what you have to say at the start of this month. Absolutely, for sure. There's also some energy going on in house 6, which can be to do with healing. Chiron, not least, the North Node, both forging good links at the start of this month. But remember I said that Venus was at the top of your chart like the Sun? Well, that is in a tense right angle with Uranus as we start the month off. So an offer that you get, or someone could step forwards in a professional context or a personal one, who really kind of grabs your attention right from the off. But I go back to my aforementioned points. The energy manifesting in Pisces this month is what you desire. It's what would be your perfect ideal. The energy that goes on to manifest in the sign of Virgo is much more about where you need to network and connect to others in order to get your desire. And the two don't actually collaborate particularly well as the month goes on. Which brings us to the 4th, the new moon. If you want to apply for that job, start that business, take a look at your resources, and jiggle them around, try to squeeze more from them, then that is a sensational new moon because it links so beneficially to the planet of fortune, Jupiter. Then on the 5th, Venus moves into a very friendly location for you, but in terms of romance, it's a cool one. Venus in Virgo is in its fall, but it does see Mercury on the same day go into a retrograde. Are you going to hear from someone you haven't heard from for a while? Is this person going to be an old flame? Would it be any different if you revisited this situation this time round? I don't know, but I think your yearning, and even all the way to a bit of lustiness, to be honest, by the middle of the month, as Mars and Jupiter come into an exact conjunction, means your willpower to get what you need can be very, very strong. And of course, Mercury retrograde isn't always about glitches, but if there is a long-term plan and it changes, for you as a fixed sign, that can be frustrating. So because the host, Virgo, is mutable, it's asking you to flex, to understand that if there's a delay or a change, it's because for a bigger reason that could be good for you, but it could in the short term be very frustrating. Also, to be honest, Mercury goes opposite Neptune and Venus goes opposite Saturn, and those are the real crux points at the heart of this month, because although Mercury does go into its retrograde on the 5th in Virgo, it inverts into your sector of connection with the wider world on the 15th. So there's going to be a bit of muddle at the heart of this month, or limitation in whatever part of your situation, or a delay. But you get a chance to use the opportunity of Mercury's retrograde to rethink and reset and recalibrate on the Mercury cazimi of the 19th. And that could coincide with some kind of job offer which really excites you. It's just the full moon on the same day means that you may have to make a snap decision, one that could affect your current professional role or current home role, because Uranus, the planet of change, is applying to both positions of the sun and the moon. You get some sukha on the 22nd when the sun moves into the sign of Virgo, because what you can do from the initial blushes of this month, which are very positive and hopeful, what you can do after the muddle that then ensues is try to find the points of collaboration. Mercury goes direct on the 28th. Something that may have paused and stopped can start to evolve again. But on the 29th, Venus does move into your 12th house. It links with Pluto, your modern ruler, however. What's the implication of that? Well, I think really, if you can't find that commonality through the sun moving into Virgo, and Venus moving out of Virgo makes you really pause for thought, it could be that the tension that Saturn has applied to Venus and Neptune to Mercury is really telling. In other words, some doubts have crept in, or things have slowed down to the point where you've rethought things, and it could actually be your work or your professional situation or your long-term finances that you end this month much more focused upon than a romantic relationship. But the yearning to have a connection with someone can be strong for sure. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Sagittarius to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen. But before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. There's a lot of exciting news to share with you, not least if we consider your ruler Jupiter, which starts the month in the part of your situation to do with relating, but very close to Mars, and they are going to meet exactly on the 14th. So you have an opportunity this month to use the enthusiasm of your ruler, but also the thrust of Mars to interact with others in a very self-confident way. Brilliant for setting your boundaries, but if there is someone you want to reach out to professionally, or there's someone that you're drawn to romantically, that combination is very powerful. But right at the start of the month, ironically, Jupiter is checked by the more restrictive energies of Saturn. So as much as you may want to make some kind of dynamic move, what's going on in your home situation could still at some way or at some level be constraining you. Perhaps it's just your particular circumstances at the moment where you're living, the demands of others who rely upon you. But also as the month begins, the Sun is in your sister fire sign of Leo, which it rules, and is forging a fantastic alliance with the North Node, but also with Mars, like Jupiter in your sector of relating. So if there is somebody that you're finding inspirational, whether it's a friend you want to travel with, whether it's a topic that you share an interest with someone else that you can collaborate on, a joint business venture, or it is that romantic situation, despite the fact that Saturn is going to bring some limitation this month in some ways, it doesn't mean to say that there's not still progress to be had, because the angle between the Sun and Mars alone is super dynamic. The Sun is at the heart of all our existences, but Mars is very much about thrust, its desire that can go with that part of your nature which loves to be expansive, adventurous and independent. But if you can be independent yet also open to collaborations, I think that's going to be a big part of your secret this month. But also your ruler Jupiter forges from the 3rd through to the 11th an amazing link with the Sun, one of the most fortunate aspects in astrology, a sextile. And this is going to become exact on the 9th, but particularly influentially, it links into the Leo new moon of the 4th. That provides a wonderful thrust of background energy for the following month, which is very much to do with revitalizing your situation. It could mean that something that has felt a bit stuck can be refreshed by taking a different approach. It may be that you want to get away from some of the demands that have been so powerful of late, but it certainly is going to give you a lot of extra vitality. And because Uranus, the planet of change, has been causing some stress around your health and your worldly routines for some years now. In fact, it does forge a right angle with Venus right at the start of this month, which could again mean that some kind of obligation or responsibility could at first seem to be inhibiting you from doing what you really want to pursue. But if changes in the air, Sagittarius, don't be surprised if it is around your work as much as your personal interests or even your romantic situation. And this is going to become much more obvious from the 5th, because Venus climbs into the most visible part of your situation. Although Venus in Virgo is in its fall, so it's not its best location technically, for you it gives you the opportunity to use a lot of diplomacy and people skills in terms of pursuing your worldly interactions. But on the same day, Mercury, the planet of communication, also in Virgo, goes into a retrograde. Perhaps the inference of the combination of these two, which come together on the 8th, is that there is a rethink that's needed. It could be around your goals and ambitions. It could be that by thinking about things again, perhaps in a more precise way, which that Virgo energy can help you with, the changes that you've been yearning for actually could be more practical than just in terms of wanting more personal freedom. So try to work with the retrograde, because the retrograde is going to see Mercury inverse back into your sister fire sign of Leo by the 15th. But it can bring some rewards if you're accepting of the lessons. Because what Mercury can do, of course, in its retrograde is slow everything down, which can cause a lot of frustrations. So if you're waiting to hear about an application, or whether someone will want to go forwards with you, it could prove to be a bit of a nail-biting time. But you can also use this time to re-examine what some of your previous goals were, because Mercury retrogrades are a great opportunity to recalibrate our approach. And because of that hugely dynamic link between Mars and Jupiter, if you keep the enthusiasm and the passion going from the 8th through to the 20th, someone's going to become much more aware of you. The complexity as this month goes on, however, is that as Mercury is in its retrograde, it does come back into an opposition with Neptune. And as Venus steps forwards, it goes into an opposition with Saturn. So worldly demands could in some ways be affected or influenced by some of your more emotional needs and considerations. The great news is that by the 19th, there's a terrific Mercury cazimi. And some new information can really provide the solution to what you've been grappling with. The full moon, which occurs in the sign of Aquarius, which, like yours, is very much a freedom lover, on the 19th, can see a major conversation occur over the following 2 weeks, and it could lead to a surprise offer or opportunity around your professional situation, but you may need to make a snap decision in order to capitalize on this. Be open to the opportunity, because on the 22nd a lot of extra attention, acclaim and recognition can start to come your way as the sun climbs to the top of your chart too. But on the 28th Mercury goes direct, and it all can start falling into place. For sure, it doesn't come out of its post-retrograde shadow until next month, but the arrival of Venus in its home sign of Libra on the 29th, forging an absolutely glorious link to Pluto for the first time in our lifetimes, but for you, suggesting that your connections as this month come to a close, whether they're professional or personal, can really clarify in a very important and very reassuring way. So as much as you burst into this month in fine form with very much a desire to shake things up and in some way shake off some of the limitations and restrictions that have been so evident of late, you may still need to work through them, and that need for freedom might actually really be a need for a change, particularly around your professional situation. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month, which gives us some very important information. Not least, we need to be mindful of your ruler Saturn, which continues its retrograde. It's asking you to look inwards to understand how you think, the third house, but also how you think around emotions, because the host is Pisces, and also your interactions around neighbours, siblings, your belief systems. Those are all under review. And it's interesting because as this month begins, Saturn is in a tense right angle with Jupiter, the planet of grow. Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini, which can be quick communications, but it's also an opportunity for you in house 6 to think about things like your life structure, your approach to work, your approach to obligations and responsibilities, but also anything to do with diet, fitness, exercise, nutrition. The 6th house is very much to do with virtue. So with the position of Saturn in the 3rd house, which is very Gemini-like, and the cluster of energies including Jupiter in Gemini in the 6th house, very Virgo-like, peering into this information in a careful way and analysing it can be a great opportunity for you. But it could feel to you that you're a bit limited, you're a bit penned in, that those responsibilities to others seem to be quite high. But you know, one of the great things about entering this month as you do is the Sun is in the sign of Leo, which is very much to do with warming up our approach to situations, and for you that's house 8, can be very transformational, but it's forging a super link to Mars, like Jupiter, in your 6th house. So if you're open to looking at things in a fresh way, the energy is there. It's just you need to be careful about what you commit to. because Jupiter can see us at times being a little bit too generous and a bit hasty in agreeing to do things, and Saturn's asking you to measure your thinking and measure your words in a very careful way. Now also, as this month begins, the moon, like Jupiter and Mars, is in your 6th house, but it's clashing with Neptune, like Saturn, in house 3. Again, this really encourages you not to be too hasty to make any commitments. It could also lead to some confusion, and perhaps confusion around your daily routines, or perhaps you could feel a little bit below par despite the energy that you would expect to get with Mars and Jupiter in your 6th house. I want to reassure you though, Capricorn, because from the 8th through to the 20th, Mars and Jupiter get within 3 degrees, and on the 14th come into an exact conjunction. That really can be a big bolster in terms of your physical vitality, energy, and also stamina. However, what we do have at the start of this month is a glorious link between the Sun and Jupiter. So Jupiter is very much about growth, the Sun about transformation, and that's threaded through the new moon, which occurs on the 4th. Over the following month, if you did want to take a closer look at your finances, investments, long-term planning, anything to do with savings, your retirement, stocks and shares, property matter, if you have any assets, is there a way that you could look at them in a fresh light? Jupiter can be about information. You could talk to someone who can actually be a great source of wisdom, but that can help you to shift something in a way which is positive to you. Moreover, on the 5th, Venus, the planet of relating, which is tested out by Uranus at the start of this month in quite a tense way, that moves for you into your 9th house. This is going to help you, give you the opportunity to try to get to the bottom of the truth of one particular matter that's really important to you. With Mercury going retrograde on the same day and starting this month in its pre-retrograde shadow, anything to do with higher knowledge or really understanding the true implications of any involvement you have, particularly of a contractual nature, see Mercury retrograde as a chance, along with Venus, to explore things and get a lot more genned up. Now, if you are hoping to travel, I can't deny that at the heart of this month, Mercury's opposition to Neptune can cause some real snags, confusions, delays, and could be incredibly frustrating. Also, if you're finding it difficult around a romantic or partnership situation, the opposition between Venus and your ruler across the 17th and the 21st could really see things chill down and get very cool. But Mercury in its retrograde inverses back into that 8th house where you have the Sun on the 15th. The Sun in the 8th house, as I mentioned before, very much about transformations. It could be that the transformations are about resources, about shared finance, business, or intimacy. If you're not quite sure about a relationship, the energies at the heart of this month could be quite challenging. But Mercury reversing back into Leo and then meeting the Sun on the 19th in a GEMINI is going to give you the chance to don your proverbial detective smack and really dive deep into what's going on and try to lift up a few things and see what's really underneath them. It could be truly illuminating, particularly if you are trying to juggle your financial situation. And all of this can come up to the boil on the 19th later in the day when we have the full moon. The full moon this year is conflicted in a T-square and the Sun by Uranus. Now we know Uranus has, for you in particular, been pushing you since 2019 to be a lot more daring and outspoken about going for what you need as an individual. But this particular full moon is saying to you, don't be too hasty. If there's something that's intriguing you around an investment opportunity, it's vital that you use that Mercury energy that is really analysing things or gives you the potential to analyse things, that you use that with a great deal of care. But on the 22nd, a wonderful event for you personally, because the Sun moves into your sister Earth sign of Virgo, and it's a chance for you to think about breaking out, being more spontaneous, perhaps planning a holiday or getting away for a weekend with some friends. The 28th sees Mercury go direct. That financial mystery can be unlocked at that point, but also in terms of your psychological insights this month. If you do meet some confusion, opposition or uncertainty by the 28th, a lot more clarity can develop. But you know, one of the great things about your sign, Capricorn, is that it's about culmination in the physical sense. So in terms of the zodiac's journey, which essentially means the progression of the animals, the zodiac, by the time we get to the goat, we're talking about the physical attainment. So you have a great appreciation of traditionality, of working hard, being applied, being patient, persistent, and climbing your way into positions of influence. While Venus moves into the part of your chart that's very much to do with these principles, but it also forges a fantastic link to Pluto in your second house of resources. So as much as the full moon may have seen you have to take some quick action around balancing the ins and outgoings of your finances, there's a huge opportunity professionally that's developing by the end of this month, as long as you're open to a change, because the move of the sun into the sign of Virgo is definitely pushing you to be open to going about things in a fresh, perhaps new and more spontaneous way. But Venus suggests that your natural steadfastness, your ability to understand what people want from you and what their goals and ambitions are and how you can relate to those with Venus's help, could see you as a very solid partner, and that could draw someone to you with a new job, a new business offer, or see your own enterprise gain a new influential client. So it's an exciting month in lots of ways. Definitely a month when you can transform your situation, but it is going to be important not to promise what more than you can realistically deliver, as Saturn is squared off by Jupiter right at the start of this month, as well as the moon by Neptune. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month, and your two rulers that we always need to be mindful of Saturn and Uranus, are very much in the mix. Saturn's squaring off to the position of Jupiter at the start of the month. Jupiter's in a very exuberant location and can be about being very go-getting and progressive. And it is going to forge a sensational link to Mars, which does peak on the 14th. But right at the start of the month, Saturn's just saying to you that when it comes to resources, be a little bit steady Eddie. If there is something that's really exciting you, make sure that you find out more information to begin with. Now Uranus, your other modern ruler, continues in your 4th house, home, family, emotion. That's squaring off to the position of Venus around relationships. You could find that you want a bit of space from someone at the start of this month. It may not be terminal, but if there is a relationship that isn't quite working for you, this can be a challenging influence. It can also be a prod to try to rejuvenate things by doing some fresh things together. So if you're in a relationship that has become a bit stale, trying to reignite that original passion you had could come from some spontaneity. So those are the roles of your two rulers as we come into the month. But as ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries. The sun's in your sector of relating, like Venus, and forging a fantastic angle to Mars. Mars, like Jupiter, is in your 5th house, which is very much to do with strutting your stuff with confidence, vigour, and no little sex appeal. So that link to the sun is very energising and really quite lovely. But also the sun links back to the position of the point of destiny, or the North Node. So your way of conveying your ideas can also be very helpful. And if a relationship has been hitting a little bit of a flat spot, the fact that Chiron in its retrograde, but like the North Node in your 3rd house of everyday conversation, is actually linking well to Venus. So maybe the angle from Uranus to Venus is a chance to bring some honesty to an issue that perhaps has been causing some snags. But the other thing that lights up the start of this month is that whilst Saturn is afflicting Jupiter, the Sun surely is not. And from the 3rd through to the 11th, there's a glittering relationship between them, which threads through the new moon of the 4th. And if you are someone who wants to socialise and interact with others, as long as you're a little bit canny with your resources, and if there is somebody that you fancy, you're not giving them too much of a big gift or making a grand gesture, I feel it's a time just to relax and go with it. People will appreciate you as you are, so don't feel you need to try too hard. But as we go into the new month, I just must say that when it comes to that financial matter, that Saturn and Jupiter are flagging up, we also have a square between Neptune and the Moon. So you may find yourself wanting to be a little bit extravagant at the start of this month, but it could be because you're not quite feeling the positivity that I'm pointing to. But give it a few days. As you work into this month, there can be some big uplift. And that new moon is a great opportunity to make some very positive links to others. This could be linked to business, to be honest. Venus is the planet of money, not just of relating. And that moves on the 5th into an area which could see you pull off some kind of deal. Strangely, because Mercury goes retrograde on the same day, it's also an opportunity to think about your ongoing financial management in a fresh light. I know that Mercury retrograde has a really tough reputation, and it can be deserved. It can cause snags. The 8th house for you could be about moving money around. So we know there's a lot of scams out there these days, with Mercury retrograde from the 5th through to the 28th. Important to be very cautious about resources, but particularly through to the 15th. Then it moves back into Leo, so the rub point then through to the 28th could be more about clearly communicating what you need. But the other thing that happens at the heart of this month is there is a tension between longer term money and shared finance and what you do in the here and now, short term decisions. And that really is there at the start of the month, with Saturn and Neptune conflicted by Jupiter and the Moon, respectively. So managing your resources in a balanced way, a little bit like the Two of Coins in tarot, is something that actually can come back to you very positively. Because on the 19th, there's a Mercury Cazimi. And if you have been having lots of discussions, whether it's with your bank, whether it's about raising capital to buy a property, whether you're looking to lease somewhere, and you're having to show what your ins and outgoings are, try to be as transparent and clear as possible, because as Mercury goes opposite Neptune, it does get a bit muddled at one point. And for sure, from the 17th to the 21st, as Venus goes opposite Saturn, there could be a bit of a tense few days, but you can come through this. And that Mercury Cazimi on the 19th sees the glow of the sun light up the critical faculties of Mercury, and is going to help you to articulate yourself really clearly. Now, the full moon in your sign on the 19th is interesting, Because if there is a relationship that isn't working, you may actually want to make quite a fast exit. Why would that be? You're someone who's usually all in because you're a fixed sign, and you don't necessarily find it easy to move on from something that's settled. Well, the reason is the combination between Mars and Jupiter, which reaches a high point on the 14th, is giving you a lot of self-belief around your personal attractiveness. And if there is a relationship which just feels that like it's a lot of give and not a lot of get, your modern ruler Uranus forges a T-square to this particular full moon, and because Uranus is in the 4th house of where you live, how you live there, and your emotional world, that need for space could be very, very strong, particularly with the sun moving into your 8th house of deep transformations on the 22nd. By the 28th, as Mercury goes direct in Leo, your clarity about a particular relationship issue really starts to fall into place. And then with Venus, the planet which rules relating, moving into a part of your chart that's very much to do with truths, but also freedoms, and linking brilliantly to Pluto in your sign for the first time in 220 years, the clarity that is developing from the middle of this month, whether it's around resources, finances, or a close relationship or a business tie, you really are going to get the outcome by the end of this month, and it may be a much better outcome than you think might be possible. So do roar into this month with a lot of conviction and confidence, Aquarius. There's a real chance to shine and sparkle, but just be aware that when it comes to resources or values, that's where there could be some sticking points at the very heart of this month. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth monthly forecast for August 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share the event chart right at the start of the month shortly on screen, but before I do, I just want to tell you about a very special opportunity. If you order your unique personal horoscope for year 2025 now, I'll give you the rest of year 2024 free, plus you'll get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Please see the link beneath this video so you can check this out. If you know your tropical astrology really well, why not check out my draconic version? Same offer, the rest of this year free, all of 25, plus your draconic character analysis, and also 30% off. On the screen now, I'm sharing your event chart right at the start of the month. We need to be mindful of your current residence, and that is Saturn and Neptune. They're both in retrogrades, and they're both forging influential angles as this month begins. Saturn with Jupiter, your traditional ruler, and Neptune with the Moon. Now, Jupiter and the Moon are both in the part of your situation, along with Mars, which is very much to do with where you live, how you live there, your home, emotional environment, how you feel about things. And particularly having the Moon there, linking back to Neptune in your sign, suggests you are going to feel at times this month really very sensitive. And finding the right balance between what you need in your inner world, the 4th house, with what you want to achieve in terms of your personal aims that can be thrusting into the wider world, that could be a little tender. Saturn in that area for the last 15-16 months has been asking you to really free yourself up from anything other than the core strands in your situation. So simplify your life. So even if you do want to achieve things, perhaps a home improvement, perhaps some do-it-yourself, it's important not to give yourself too much on your plate this month, Pisces. But as the month begins, the Sun in the 6th house, very much about being virtuous, and that's forging and energized and that's in a very good link with Mars in that fourth house. So if you did want to make some changes to where you live, as long as you don't overburden yourself, give yourself some achievable targets. So write a list and work on the things that are essential, but don't overburden yourself, then you can get stuck in. There's also a link with Venus in your sixth house, also Leo, in a square with Uranus. If you did need to talk about something, perhaps to do with your work, you could come up with actually a very good solution, perhaps working part-time at work, part-time at home. Some kind of flexibility around your professional situation might call out to you. Of course, Venus in the sixth house can be about professional relationships, but it also can still be about relationships. Is there someone that you do connect to in your everyday world that's taken your fancy a little bit? It could become more obvious as this month goes on, not least because of Venus moving into your sector of relating on the 5th. But before that happens, I want to tell you about the super energized link between the Sun and Mars and the Sun and Jupiter at the start of this month. So as long as you don't give yourself too much to do, you can take some very positive steps around your home situation. And that feeds into the new moon of the 4th. For example, if you wanted to make some changes to your diet or exercise regime, it's possible that someone within your family can give you some really good advice, or perhaps you're going to be guided more by your emotional instincts. Anything to do with making yourself feel safer and more secure is going to appeal to you. If moving altogether is on your tick list, as Mars and Jupiter close up together and achieve a conjunction by the 14th, you're going to be very motivated to make this happen. But as I mentioned, on the 5th, Venus moves into probably its best location in its entire rotation for you by moving into the sign of Virgo. Now, there's a slice of irony here because Venus in Virgo is not its personal best position, but for you it gives you the opportunity to let go of a few things that aren't quite perfect, to celebrate the relationships you have, even if there are some things that are not quite as you would like. One of the things that Venus in the 7th house asks us to do is let's celebrate the things we have in common. Let's build bridges, not walls. But on the 5th, ironically, the double irony is that Mercury, the planet of communication, does go into a retrograde. Perhaps the combination of these two, which come into an exact conjunction on the 8th, is asking you to rethink your approach to relationships in general. Maybe you have been a little bit caught up in wanting things exactly as you would like, which entirely understandable. We can all have that. But sometimes people are as they are, and that isn't always perfect. So there's an opportunity to work on things. But your expectations could be quite high with Mercury meeting up with Neptune in an opposition at the heart of this month, and also Venus going into an opposition with Saturn. Now, if you're in a relationship that isn't working at all well, that really could be a break point, to be honest. And maybe the combination between Mars and Jupiter on the 14th can be a prod, a little bit of a nudge to you to think about, could you go your own way, find your own home if you've been cohabiting and it really has got very sticky. But I wouldn't rush to any judgments. Venus is still asking you to try to find those commonalities, but Saturn could see you being a bit of a stickler about what's not quite working for you. If you have been getting to know someone new recently, for example, then perhaps you may find yourself wanting to retreat into what you feel comfortable with and not necessarily wanting to extend in building up the tie. You may not necessarily want to finish it in that case, just have a little bit of space to think. Your professional situation comes back into astrological focus from the 15th as Mercury inverses back into your 6th house. Something to do with an appointment. You may need to rejig or rearrange from the 15th through to the 28th. Could be a bit frustrating, that may even be linked to a pet, but actually as things turn out, it can work for you. The 19th sees a conjunction between the retreating Mercury and the Sun, a GEMINI. It's an inferior conjunction, but a great chance to think about work, for example. Are you in the role you really want? Are there new people you could connect to? If your professional relationships are not great, that's really going to show up around the full moon of the 19th. It's not that people will necessarily tell you how they feel. It's possible that you'll find out from someone else how someone feels, with Uranus intersecting both the Sun and the Moon in a T-square, which could be irritating. But then there's a chance from the 22nd to start all over, build a new alliance, perhaps even move to a different opportunity. The 28th sees Mercury go direct. You'll get the clarity you need around the practical work matter from that point. The 29th can be great for you in terms of finance. Something to do with your past. Could be a legacy, an inheritance, maybe something you've saved towards, maybe a pension product. You can have some kind of payout towards the end of this month and the early part of September, which can really delight you. The planetary influences at the end of August are very strong in terms of where you've invested in the past and people now appreciating that, or you getting some kind of payout for the provisions that you've been carefully and patiently putting away over that period of time. So it is true that with Jupiter and Mars in your 4th house, you're going to want to be busy around your home situation, but I wouldn't overburden yourself. There is an opportunity to relate well to people from the 5th, but I feel as we get into the middle of the month, the Mercury retrograde, the opposition to Neptune, Venus going opposite Saturn is a real test to see whether a relationship can really stand the course of time. But clarity comes at the end of this month for sure. It's been a real pleasure being with you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. About 50% of people who watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by clicking that sub button and also that bell notification symbol. And please check out that special offer below.